For most of human history, saving money was considered wise, prudent, responsible. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Now, in many parts of the world, if you save money, you're actually losing it. Not through theft, not through bad luck, through design. And once you understand why, the entire financial system looks different. For thousands of years, across every civilization, the principle was simple: store value for future use. Grain in ancient Egypt, silver in Rome, gold coins buried under floorboards in medieval Europe. The form changed, but the concept remained constant. Save during good times, use those savings during bad times. It was survival. It was rational. And for most of that history, saving actually rewarded you. If you lent your money to someone reliable, they paid you interest. If you deposited it in a bank, the bank paid you for the privilege of using your funds. The longer you saved, the more you accumulated. Time was your ally. This wasn't just economics. It was morality. Thrift was a virtue. Governments encouraged savings. Schools taught it. Benjamin Franklin's "a penny saved is a penny earned" became cultural wisdom. The entire framework supported the idea that saving money was not just smart, but right. Then something shifted, and today, saving money has become one of the worst financial decisions you can make. The shift began after World War II, though its roots go back further. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Its mission included stabilizing currency and managing inflation. But from its inception, the system was designed with a preference for liquidity over savings. Banks were incentivized to lend, not to hold vast reserves. This set the stage for what was to come. After the Second World War, Western economies faced a mountain of challenges: massive war debts, aging populations, and the expensive task of rebuilding entire nations. The traditional solution would have been incredibly painful: either drastically higher taxes or severe austerity measures. But there was another, quieter option: inflation. If you inflate the currency, you reduce the real value of debt. It's a form of invisible taxation, and it punishes savers the most. Your hard-earned money sitting in an account silently loses its purchasing power year after year. The pivotal moment arrived in 1971. President Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. Suddenly, money was no longer tied to any physical asset. It became fiat currency, backed only by trust in the government that issued it. Central banks could now print as much as they wanted whenever they felt it was necessary. And print they did. Inflation soared. In the US, it reached double digits. In the UK, it hit an astounding 25% in 1975. Imagine you had money in a savings account earning 5% interest. If inflation was 10%, you were losing 5% of your wealth every single year. You were being punished for being prudent. Central banks adapted by raising interest rates dramatically. In the early 1980s, under leaders like Paul Volcker in the US, rates pushed above 15%. Suddenly, saving became incredibly attractive again. For a brief, golden decade, the old logic returned. You could once again earn a real return on your savings. But it didn't last. By the 2000s, new pressures emerged: the dot-com crash, the housing bubble, and the seismic event of the 2008 financial crisis. Each time, the response from central banks was the same: lower interest rates, stimulate borrowing, encourage spending, and by extension, punish saving. After 2008, interest rates in most developed countries fell to near zero. And in some cases, they even went negative, meaning you would have to pay a bank to hold your money for you. This was a complete inversion of thousands of years of financial logic. Imagine depositing your money in a bank, and instead of earning interest, you have to pay them. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. It became reality in Japan, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, and the Eurozone. Trillions of dollars in government bonds traded at negative yields. Think about that. Investors were literally paying governments for the privilege of lending them money. In Switzerland, negative rates hit minus 0.75%. In Denmark, something even stranger happened. You could get a mortgage with negative interest, meaning the bank actually paid you to borrow money. Meanwhile, in Germany, savers with large deposits faced penalties. The European Central Bank's deposit rate dropped to minus 0.5%. This was completely unprecedented. The fundamental logic of lending and saving was turned upside down. Some banks started charging their retail customers negative interest on deposits above a certain amount. Suddenly, having too much money in the bank became a problem. Savers had to scramble, splitting their funds across multiple institutions just to avoid being charged for holding their own money. The system was sending a clear message: don't save, spend, or invest. But whatever you do, don't hold cash. For most retail savers, the situation was even worse. Their savings accounts paid next to nothing, often just 0.01% interest. At the same time, the real costs of living, food, housing, healthcare, education were rising much, much faster. Let's do the math. If your savings earn 0.01% and real inflation is 4%, you're losing nearly 4% of your purchasing power every single year. And this isn't an accident. This is by design. Modern central banking operates on a core principle. Moderate inflation is necessary for economic growth. The target is usually around 2% per year. The theory is, if people expect prices to rise, they'll spend their money now rather than wait. But this logic only holds if people don't save. So, the entire system is engineered to discourage saving. Interest rates are deliberately kept below the rate of inflation. This is a policy known as financial repression. The days of earning your way to wealth simply by saving are over. Now, you're forced to take risks. And if you just want to keep your money safe, you're effectively penalized. Let's compare generations. A family in 1980 could put their money in a savings account earning 10% interest. With inflation around 8%, they still gained a 2% real return. Fast forward to 2010, that same family might earn 1% on their savings, while inflation was 2%, resulting in a negative real return. By 2020, the situation was even more stark: 0.01% interest with inflation running at 2% or 3%. The numbers tell a clear story. The system actively punishes those who try to build financial security the traditional way. Then there's the psychological impact. Saving used to provide a sense of security, the comfort of knowing you could weather a crisis. But when your savings constantly lose value, that security evaporates. You're pushed into taking risks you may not understand, like investing in the stock market. It creates a constant state of anxiety, a nagging feeling that if you're just standing still, you're actually falling behind. Consider the elderly people who spent decades diligently saving for retirement. They followed all the rules, did everything they were told, and what's their reward? Their life savings earn essentially nothing while their living costs continue to climb. The reward for a lifetime of thrift has become punishment. The pandemic supercharged this entire process. Governments printed unprecedented amounts of money. In 2020 and 2021 alone, the U.S. created roughly 40% of all dollars ever printed. This flood of new money poured into asset markets. Stocks soared to record highs. Real estate prices jumped 20% to 30% in a single year. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin hit astonishing new peaks. Everything inflated. Everything, that is, except for savings accounts, they still paid nothing. By 2022, the official inflation rate hit 9%. Savings were being eroded faster than at any point in the last 40 years. So, what's a saver supposed to do? The system offers no good answer. Accept negative real returns and watch your wealth erode. Take risks in markets you don't understand, or opt out entirely, which most people can't do. And here's the deeper implication. This changes the relationship between citizens and the state. When you could save and preserve wealth, you had independence. Options. The ability to say no. Savings were freedom. But when your savings constantly lose value, you become dependent on your current income, on your employer, on government programs, on debt you can't afford to stop, can't afford to wait. The treadmill never stops. This isn't accidental. Financial repression is a tool of control. It keeps people working, spending, borrowing, complying. It transfers wealth from savers to borrowers, from the prudent to the reckless, from the middle class to asset holders. Because the wealthy don't keep money in savings accounts, they own assets that appreciate, assets that benefit from inflation. Meanwhile, ordinary savers watch their purchasing power decline year after year. They're told to be financially responsible, to save for retirement, but the system makes it nearly impossible. The math doesn't work. The incentives are backward. History shows where this leads. When savings are punished, societies become fragile. People live paycheck to paycheck by necessity. When the next crisis hits, there are no reserves, just debt and dependency. For thousands of years, saving was survival. It was how families endured famines, wars, economic collapses. But in the modern financial system, saving has been redefined as hoarding, as economically inefficient, as something to be discouraged and inflated away. The shift happened gradually. Your grandparents could save and build wealth. Your parents struggled but managed. You're running just to stay in place. And the system tells you this is normal. But it's not normal. It's engineered. Saving money became a punishment because the system needs you to spend, to borrow, to keep the machine running. Your financial security was sacrificed for economic growth. Your independence was traded for systemic stability. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. You just have to be willing to see them.